What's up, guys? Welcome back to Grab Your Torch with Caleb and Joel. Today we are here to we're going to be ranking the next 10 seasons on our list of ranking every season of Survivor. So I guess this would be 35 through 24 or 26 if I've got my numbers correct.
Something like that.
Something like that. But
The
well,
ranked.
they're ranked. Yes.
The ranked.
Exactly. 35 through 26. That's right. And so we'll go talk through them. There's a lot better seasons in here. We're still not to the nitty gritty of like great seasons of Survivor, but we'll have a lot of fun. So, Joel, would you like to take us away? How have you been?
I've been good. I've been grinding my Survivor lore. I think just kidding, not really. Yeah, but just like getting back in the swing of things with school, a lot of stuff with that, but I am like really excited because I think Survivor right now in general is just in an upward trajectory. And I think looking back on a lot of seasons like this, it's not only fun, but you also get to see like every season has some value to it. And even like the last ones we ranked, even though a lot of them were icky and we didn't like them, like we always had like some moment where we're like, "Oh, okay, we kind of like that, or some character." So it is good to see that.
Yeah, I always say like every season of Survivor is a good season of Survivor because it's a good season of television because that's how great the show is. And we have quite a few iconic seasons on this list. I would say there are some controversial takes. We have some kind of high, some kind of low. Um, but this is our average of both. And so we'll be talking through these together. I'm really looking forward to getting to it. So starting off with number 36. We've got Survivor Nicaragua.
Oh yeah, Nicaragua is like it's in kind of like the dark ages of Survivor, where I think it kind of gets clumped together with all these pretty bad seasons. I mean obviously it's not great. It's like near the bottom of the list. But I do think it has a lot of merit to it. I think the whole cast in general is pretty decent. Obviously like we have some pretty good characters. We have some great strategics. There isn't like much evolution in the game, but I do think overall it's a pretty solid season overall. But obviously I think the winner is not very good strategically. I think there is like some ickiness with the two quits, and it does like at the end of it, like it does drastically change the season.
Absolutely. Coming off the heels of arguably the best season of Survivor being heroes versus villains, I think a lot of people were going into it with high expectations, and I think this is something that happened as well with 40 and 41 after Winners at War. Everyone was really hyped going into 41 because of how good the previous season was. And so I think there was a lot of extra hype going into the season when it came out. And then in addition to that, I think the problems with this season is that the pacing was pretty slow. That there was the Medallion of Power, not a great twist. Obviously, there's the double quit episode, which is just pretty hard to get through, especially since Nyanka was one of like the larger characters kind of going into the later back half of the merge and heading into the finale. She was actually had a great chance of winning. That some would say that as well. And then in addition to that, I think some of the strategy was lackluster. We do have some uh pretty decent characters in Marty and Brenda on this season that I enjoyed watching a lot. And then Fabio is just a hilarious winner to me. And I think although he gets a lot of flack for his game, I think he did, a great job. He convinced the jury to win. He deserved to win. And he's still one of the youngest winners that we've ever had in the show's history. And so I think that's also crazy. And then Chris Rice played this season too, so that's also something. And Jimmy
Yeah.
Johnson. So it's a very interesting season.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think when you look at the cast, you're like, there's definitely some duds in there, but there's also some bright spots. I mean, Fabio winning, I always think that if a Survivor season is just very middling, like there's nothing like crazy happening, I just want the most chaotic like outcome that happened. And this season it was so I definitely was super hyped to see him win, especially at the time. I remember watching this. And I remember watching him do the sword challenge. I was like, oh my gosh, he's actually going to do it. and he's just a funny winner overall. Like he's just a goofball, and I truly think that's one of the better aspects of this season is the end game and watching him do that.
Yes, and I also think the moment where like another funny moment that comes to mind is when Holly steals um what's his name? Dan, like his like super nice shoes. I think that's just a hilarious moment. She like goes and like steals them and buries them somewhere, and she's like, ah, I don't care. She was also a fun character for the time. Like as like a it's still a Dark Ages season of Survivor, so it's like you kind of have to find your silver lining wherever it may lie. So all in all, I think I enjoy the season. I would probably have to say that my favorite character was Marty. Like I still think we're robbed by never getting him back. He's
I
still
agree.
talked about a lot. Like if they ever did a second chances, like they should bring Marty back, like as like kind of a middle school player to bring back. But and then I guess I don't know if I have a favorite moment. There's a few funny Jeff moments in the season too. Um, I just remember like the King of Sass videos where I think I forgot who it was, but he does like a backflip off the challenge, and he's like ceremonious backflip didn't really help in the challenge because they ended up losing the whole time. So I
I
like
remember that.
that's a pretty funny moment. But it's pretty lackluster season overall. I don't really have a lot to say about it.
Yeah, I will say, my favorite moment of the whole season is like when you look back on it, you kind of forget about it. Is that Final Tribal was like kind of crazy. That like going into it, Fabio was like supposed to win in a landslide, and Chase has an insanely great final tribal. But the thing is, like Fabio also has a great one where people are crying. Like it is like one of the few times I think in Survivor where someone's final tribal speech got people to like physically cry, and he still lost votes. Like, and it comes down to super close. I think that's like probably the highlight of the season to me is watching like basically these two just go at it. Even though I don't think either of them played like insanely well, I do like the fact that they're both trying so hard for the win, and it came down to a single vote. Well, also saying that Marty is probably the best character of the season. I do love the fact that he was like, "Yeah, I'm a grandmaster in chess," and he's not. And it's like, even if like you're lying about it, why are you lying that you're smart? Like that's so silly. Like, why are you doing that? So he's great. He needs to return. I wanted Fabio to return for Winners at War so bad. I think it would have been funny. I think he should return. I think watching him come back to play again would be the most electric thing imaginable. So one of those two returning would be great.
Absolutely. Well, going into the next season, we have on our list number 34, Survivor Ghost Island. And now this is getting into the modern back half of the 30s. Um, we're committed to Fiji at this point, and so I think a lot of the kind of degrading of like not moving locations on this cycle of like the 35, 36 kind of like made it a little bit more boring, combined with the fact that the cast was all really young and they didn't have a whole lot to offer like diversity lot wise. Like they're a lot of them were kind of like the same personality. Um, they didn't really have a lot of good strategy. But then again, there are some fantastic moments, like the Ghost Island in is itself. I thought it's a cool concept. Like in theory, I think when they would go to the island and not get anything would make it pointless, and I feel like that was kind of a mistake on the producer's part. But when they had moments where the past seasons of Survivor are haunting them, I think that's just an interesting way to go about things, and I think that's encapsulated when Dom takes the urn from Cagayan by choosing to take Wendell with him, and just like Wu took Tony in the end of Cagayan. I think that's like a great kind of like full circle moment in that season, where it really did come back to haunt him because he ended up having the votes tied at the end and then ultimately losing. And I think it's we're robbed that we haven't had a returning season yet and gotten to see Dom come back and play because he's one of the best to not win because him and Wendell's alliance were truly dominant. And I think that's enough. That's a lot of credit to Wendell's game too because he had more social game. He got close with Laurel, and Laurel ultimately proved to be the deciding factor. And so I there's a lot of to glean from this season. I think the Wendell versus Chris Noble, great TV. Um, I love that moment. I love the Chris Noble rap on Ponderosa. Like that's a hilarious moment, even though that's not on the show itself. And then
Mhm.
overall, I think there's a lot of good things from it, but ultimately it's like more in the mediocre like side of things as far as Survivor goes.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think this season's like theme of Ghost Island is a great one. I think it really like adds lore to like people are gonna be like, whoa, what? Like, what do you mean this crazy thing happened with Eric? And like they go back and they're like, oh my gosh, this is a whole season. I think that's great. It's a genius, in fact. I would like even be okay with like another Ghost Island like way down the line. I do think one problem, of course, with like casting wise, very young. Obviously, like people like Dom are like older, but even then, like they're dominating the game. I would say that the two tribe swaps actually turned out to be bad. I think it really did force people to stay with their original tribes. And I think that was a huge deficit. And I think Dom and Wendell handled that like about as well as they could have. Like they dominated the game. I think it was just such a perfect in like the in game, if you look at it from purely a strategic way and not like a character development way, it is very interesting to see like who wins immunity because it's just like Dom and Wendell back and forth, but like Dom has an idol. And once he like wins immunity, it's like, okay, I'm gonna take the shot at Wendell, but like then Wendell wins immunity, but he has the idol and it's going back and forth to a point where like, hey, like it was destined those two to come the final tribal and tie. And I do think when you look like that, it's a decent season if you look it through that. But all the rest of the characters honestly were lackluster.
Yeah, they're all sidekicks to Dom and Wendell. You know, ultimately their path to victory. And obviously there's some great characters like we've already mentioned. Um, I guess we haven't already mentioned all of them, but I don't know if I see a whole lot returning. You know, at this point, like only Dom is probably like the big returnee from the season, and then going into like favorite player, like he's definitely my favorite player on the season. I like him a little bit more than Wendell, just because like he seems a little bit more strategic minded, and we get to see that a lot from him, and I enjoy that side of things. Um, and then my favorite moment, although this is pretty cliche, would be the tie vote at the end. I think that's just a great survivor moment. Like we've never seen anything before like it. And then even as recent as this last season, like it's still exciting to even think about the possibility of another tie vote and see what would happen. Um, and ultimately props to Wendell for like being with Laurel as well and getting her vote at the end too when he didn't even think he had to. But he was playing the game the whole time and definitely deserved the win. So I don't know. I enjoy this season. Um, it's an easily bingeable season, but I don't know if I could put it a little higher than in what we have it at right now.
That's very fair. I would agree. I would like the tie vote to me is one of the most iconic moments of all of Survivor. Like to me, it was the first time it ever happened. It was insane to watch at the time because like it made sense. Both of them played practically the same game. And I do think like Wendell kind of gets like discredited at times. I don't think he was properly shown on the season of how good he was socially. But I also think that like Dom also dominated as well. I think either one of them would have won unanimously if they could have gotten to the end without the other. But I will say my favorite moment outside of the tie vote is one of my personal favorite moments is when Chris Noble grabs everyone but like Dom and Wendell to go to the well to tell them to vote out Dom during the merge vote. I think that was so funny. And everyone was just so confused, and you just had that shot of Chris taking everyone to the well, and everyone's just following him like begrudgingly. And I would love a Chris Noble return. I think he was so funny. I think he was like he made the pre-merge like him and Dom's relationship, rivalry, friendship was great. And outside of that, like there's only really three characters. I mean, Donovan's actually like a low key one that I would throw in. He was a good positive character, but like overall, like
Yeah,
not that much.
I'm not seeing a whole lot, but yeah. I had this one a little bit higher than you, and then you had Nicaragua dramatically higher than me. I had it at 40th and you had it at 29th. And so there's a little bit of different takes there. And
Yeah.
then going into the next season, which we are pretty different on this one, which is Survivor Worlds Apart. And it ends up being in this episode, which I would have much preferred it to be in the first one. It's my third worst season of all time. Um, but Joel has it all the way up at 22nd. So I'll let you talk about Worlds Apart and why you like it so much.
Okay, hear me out. Look, I get it. I get why people don't like this season. I dislike those parts a lot. But if you can let me cook here, this is one of the most interesting strategic games I have ever seen. This has some of the best characters that have not returned. We have possibly the first winner, I would say, solely won, like maybe Fabio, but like when you think of like physical winner, you think of Mike. You think of this guy who ruined his game at the auction of all things and had to go on this insane run against people a lot younger than him, and he does it. He's the good guy. The good guys win at the end. But most importantly, me watching this season, I like here's the thing. I personally love Rodney. I think Rodney is one of the funniest characters to ever be on Survivor. I think his downfall is incredible. I think the fact that he had to wash dishes on his birthday, he didn't go on a single reward, but also like people discredit the fact that like he was an insanely good player. Like when the merge happened and like he was going through and he realized like Mike and them aren't like that loyal to him, he makes an entirely new dominant alliance. And truth, like you can see it at the reunion. They asked if Mike didn't win, who wins? Like Rodney gets a lot of votes. And this is also with like the influence that everyone saw Rodney as a bad guy still. Obviously like Dan Foley, like I don't know what you're doing, bud. Like, but like he is such a goofy character. Like the fact that he's just like, yeah, like me and you are the same trend. It's like, no, you're not. Like nothing close. But like it is so funny to me that he thinks that. And obviously the bullying, all that is terrible. But to me, the fact that she does get redeemed at the end with a mic win is kind of rounds out the season that this is a positive season at the end of the day where like a lot of the negativity and like the earlier seasons, like it doesn't get resolved. Like it just either get kicked out or like they continue in the game. But like here, you get to see Mike pull off this insane run. And there's nothing, one of my favorite moments in any Survivor seasons is when the winner wins final immunity and they realize they won. But Mike winning final immunity and everyone else coming together being like, we want to give it to him, crowning him the winner. I mean, it is just awesome stuff to me. And I can go on and on about this season. It was one of my like first like seasons I truly loved as a kid watching it because I love the challenges and I have like a soft spot for it. But I do think it does get like a little like I probably ranked it too high, truth be told, but like I definitely think it deserves like more credit than it gets.
Yeah, for sure. It's the nostalgic factor as well. I just think like both Will and Dan are just really hard to watch for me. And then like the pre-merge is pretty boring as well, in my opinion. I think there's just a lot of like boring, straightforward votes. I do think though, like the So Kim and like Joaquin downfall is really funny from the first episode when they're lying about like their what the reward that they found, like the idol clue. I think that's really just fun to watch. But like other than that, the pre-merge is pretty lackluster. The characters they bring back like on Game Changers are like, or at least Joe comes back for Cambodia, but they also bring back Haley and then
It's like
Sierra,
I don't know why they did that.
like not great characters to bring back. Like obviously Mama C should have come back. Like I like Mama C a lot. She's probably my favorite character on the season. Um, but I'd agree with you. I like watching like the win, like winning all the challenges. I think Mike's win is really great. Um, it's definitely up there as far as winning games go, but I think there's a lot of like negatives that it's hard for me to look at the positives from those. Like it's just there's a lot of boring moments and then there's a lot of like kind of hateful moments that just make it hard to watch. And although I do love the Rodney doing dishes on his birthday scene, that's great TV as well. But I don't know, like all the cast kind of just dislikes each other, and then in the end, which I don't really know how Mike gets back from this, but he completely sells the auction. Like instead of either committing to the bit of I'm gonna take this advantage, he instead just bails out. He's like, never mind. But he already showed his cards, and so at that point he was screwed either way. Like he didn't even get the thing he was trying to get for what everyone
Mm.
was mad at him for. And so I think that's a terrible boneheaded move. But he ends up coming back and starts dominating challenges, and that's the only way he wins the game. And people respect him enough for that. So I think that's cool to watch. But I don't really have much else to say. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the season.
That's okay. I mean, like, obviously, I know this is like not a loved season. I love it. And of course, like, part of it is because Jin from that season, I had such a big crush on her as a kid. I mean, like, the fact that Jin didn't come back and Haley did was soul crushing. I was so upset. I also think that, like, if the right people came back on this season, like, I would have loved, like, obviously, a Mama C return. Like, just been hyping her to come back forever. Like, where's that at? Um, but I think like imagine just a Rodney return. Like that dude is just such a goof to me. Like I looked him up on Instagram the other day and he's like I think he's like a spiritual leader or something. Like how did he get to there? Like what is he up to? Like he's so crazy to me. And obviously like the pre-merge is pretty boring. I think the most electric part of it is Mike throwing the challenge. I think that's great. I think a lot of this cast is kind of underwhelming, but at the end of the day, I definitely ranked it too high. But I do personally like it. If and I'm also just like very optimistic, I guess, on a couple of these seasons. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm very
that's
biased about this one.
yeah. The early seasons you watch when you like first start like watching live and stuff like can be near and dear. Which I have a similar experience with a season that will be a bit higher. It'll be next week. So,
There you
um,
go.
going into number 32, we have Survivor Panama Exile Island, which we have a fantastic winner here. I'm just kidding. We have RS, the winner. Um, I don't know. This season's a mixed bag for me. Obviously, we have Shane. He's perfect in every way. I think just like anytime where Shane's on the screen, or Suri for that matter. Like this is the birth of one of the most iconic Survivor players in Survivor history, which is Suri, and she, plays her butt off in this game too. And so obviously we have a Pagani in this season, which is boring to watch, but I think it's not as bad because the Kasaya Six are so interesting, and like
Mhm.
all the people in that group are kind of fun to root for and fun to watch. And so it's really fun to watch them kind of cannibalize each other at the end and see who wins. Or yeah, all the Kasayas and then Terry Dietz as well in there as well, dominating challenges. But I don't have a whole lot to say about this season. This is one of the ones I quickly binged through, and so I don't no have a lot of knowledge, so you take it away.
Yeah, this is definitely like obviously most people think of this season as like the Suri season, and I definitely agree. Like this is like a master class of how to run your first game, and she does it in an era of Survivor where like her archetype should not have done that. Like she's like so well positioned. She's so good socially. You see it all the time. She's such a fun character. And I don't think people give her enough credit for that. That like she's a great player, but like she's also a great character. I love her on this season. I think in general this season's like kind of boring because like you have to get through to Pagani. But when that happens, then you see the brilliance of Terry. And Terry's like one of the like I don't know if he's one of the first, but he's probably one of the most popular like players to ever win like go on a run like that. It's like him and Ozzy at the time were just seen as like these titans of challenges. And I think obviously final immunity was like super unbalanced because like of course the lightest person was gonna win that. And of course like you can't take Terry to the end. But I don't know. It's like an okay season to me. I obviously the 3-2-1, brilliant move. I think people kind of give Aris a lot of credit for keeping the six together. And I give him a lot of credit for that too, because he was the figurehead. I do believe that if it was him and Suri at the end, as much as I hate it, I do think Ars wins that. But the thing was he was actively trying to get her to the end, which I do fault him for. But overall, I think his game was actually kind of like low key underrated. Like he was actually, I'm pretty sure he was the first person to ever think of the safe vote. It just never happened. He obviously like in his return, like he doesn't do great, but he does prove that he can win immunity. He was amazing at threat management, honestly, and was able to run this alliance all the way to a win. It was a pretty dominant win, like a pretty middling win. Like he did what he had to do. It just wasn't that flashy, but I do think Aris in general is a cool name. And I think he's really funny that he's super zen and that he answers a lot of his questions at Final Tribal that like super nobly. And I'm like, why are you doing that? But outside of that, I'm kind of with you. I don't really care all this that much for this season outside of like the Bruce medevac when Shane Powers is naked during it. That was hilarious to me. Probably my favorite moment of the season.
And we
And
also have
then
in the
I'll
same
go for it.
well, it's like it's 30-33 for you, 31 for me. So it's
Yeah,
kind
we're really I'm like,
we agree
like
about this one. I think Shane worried about his private parts and getting Sari to check on them for him. I think that's
that was a
one of
great moment. I love
that's
that one.
that's hilarious. Um and I think Sari's obviously my favorite player. How could you not love Sari at this point in time in Survivor history? Just like her legacy at this point is insane. She's
Hmm.
plus won 3 times, like including this season. Um, Most people say she's the greatest player to never win, and so we get. Yeah, I also like the 3-2-1 vote is iconic, and like it's also we still talk about it today as one of like the best strategic moves that has been made. And so I think that's also attributed to Sri as well. And so I don't know. I like the season. I don't love it.
Yeah, there you go. Well, we can move on to, I believe, number 31, if I'm not mistaken. We're going all the way back to season four, Marquesas. And to me, Marquesas is such a silly little season. Obviously, coming off the heels of Africa, it takes a huge jump up. There's a lot more strategy. I think, obviously, the introduction of Boston Rob was huge, this titan of the game. And this season was the first time we've seen like an alpha member get taken out. We saw the rock draw. We saw the first ever like true like flip of a game. There was a lot of good stuff. I do like the winner as well. I think Zepia is a great winner, actually. She's definitely underrated. And I do think people overrate her. I do think people overrate her. Like she's not like top like 20 or like anything crazy like that. But I do think like her game wasn't shown, and I do think like she's a better player than her game shows, I should say. Um, yeah, I think overall this season was like pretty good outside of like the fact that like two people that you didn't really get to know all that well got to the end.
Yeah, I actually think this is the best season out of the first five. I have it the highest personally. I like this season a lot. It takes a turn. It's supposed to be Survivor Jordan, but most people know this, but obviously during 9/11 they couldn't film there, and so they had to move last minute to the Marquesas. And I think the cast here is just a great cast. Like the Maramu tribe, like although it's dysfunctional, like we have the birth of Boston Rob, which everyone loves Boston Rob. He's the best, player ever, blah blah blah. Jeff's favorite, you know. But he also does have a lot of great TV moments here. He gets rid of Hunter early pre-merge. Um, he has a feud with Gina. I think that like those are funny moments. Um, Sean Rector, like, dude, he's one of the best like early Survivor characters that we've ever gotten. He's never played again, which is quite a shame. He's still involved in the Survivor community. If we ever get a second chances again, we need him back on our screens so much because he really changed a lot in this game. Him and Vesepia really kind of flipped the game by getting Pascal and Leah to flip with them with that pecking order challenge, and then they ended up taking control of the game and getting rid of a bunch of people. And I also forgot Kathy; she was also there as well. But uh, Kathy's also
Kathy.
great. I love Kathy. Um, but I think. having like an actual like power change, like that's incredible for the show. Without that, we would be missing out on a lot. Um,
Mm.
and I think Giuseppe is a great winner. I think she's also very underrated. I would have her probably top 20 in my opinion. I don't know. I like her a lot. She does a lot of great moments. And basically can I don't I guess the how close the vote was with between her and Nalia is kind of she should have gotten a landslide victory because of how well she played because Nalia didn't do anything. Um,
Yeah.
but she won the final immunity challenge by keeping on journal and taking note of everyone because she knew that that was a challenge. And so she had memorized all the answers before they even got there. And so she completely gamed that whole challenge and basically that secured her the win at the end. And so I like Marquesas. I don't know. I don't have a lot else to say about it.
Yeah,
There
I like
are
Marquez.
obviously production errors too. Like you can see in some of the challenges, they're pretty rushed. Like one of them, like whoever can fly a kite and wins a reward or something, which is kind of a bad challenge. But sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, I was about to say like, I like Marquesas. It's like a cornerstone of a lot of survivor strategy. If you want to see where a lot of it comes from, it's here. I definitely like obviously Shane is one of my favorite, um, like one of my personal favorite um early like survivors player. Like I love him. I want him to return so badly. But I also recognize like, hey, this season it has a lot of the flaws of an old school season, which isn't its fault. It's building off of Africa and it's better than Africa in my opinion. And I do agree with you. I think it is like I do think another season is probably better in the top five, like the first five, but that's just for me. Um, I think the rock draw is a really interesting way of handling a final four. I kind of like I think that's super interesting, in fact. I wish one day they would just like randomly bring back all the old rules. But overall, I really do like the season. I love the winner. I obviously a lot of my seasons are based off like because I do think the winner story should correlate with the season story. And so I do wish we got to see more of Vesepia because she's like I think she's hilarious. Like all her postseason stuff are like, yeah, I'm just gonna keep working at like shopping at Walmart, like nothing changes. And I was like, you queen, I love you. So definitely love her. I hope more people from that season come back. I love Kathy. We didn't really talk much about her, but I think she is just such an amazing character, player. The fact she gets all the way to the final three is ridiculous. Like, I think she wins in like a landslide. Like, I think she beat straight up V's Pasepia.
Yeah.
And I'm glad she returned. And yeah, this season produced a lot of great characters. I think this is one of the better, like, really got where obviously they fail in season five, but like this is where a lot of the good character work that casting started to come up with. This is where it started, where you see that in like season six of like you can see like the correlations between them.
Yeah, I'd agree for sure. One of my favorite moments as well is like the Kathy and Rob like kind of dinner like summit that they had. Like
Yeah.
that's just great. Like Kathy in her confessional being like, "Yeah, I don't trust this guy. Like I'm um like I think that's great." And then somehow like we managed to get Rob back. Like this also is like the start of like their relationship, and that comes back in All Stars, which ends up biting Kathy in the butt, and Rob gets the kind of the upper hand again there. But yeah, I like Marquesas. We can go ahead and move on now.
All right. Coming in at number 30, we got one of the most forgotten seasons of Survivor. We got Survivor Guatemala. Obviously this season is kind of known for the fact that like it's not known. Because it kind of goes to the theme like Danny, the winner, purposely like hit herself from production. She played a lot better game than people give her credit for. And but I think a lot of this season is how much you like Stephanie and Stephanie Rice. That we get to see this completely other side of her. We like at the time of when it was made, like she was seen as like one of the biggest heroes in America. And then we get to see this extremely villainous side of her, which I think is cool. I think the season is has a great location. Like we get to see crazy good rewards. Like it's so cool. We're in a temple in the middle of nowhere. I love it. I do like the location. I think the gameplay is what you expect in earlier seasons. It's just hit that. I don't know. There's nothing like too crazy strategy wise outside of things more so like the auction and other things along those lines. But I do think it is a shame that a lot of these characters haven't returned. And I will say one of the biggest things that the season has is the original idol.
The original what?
Idol.
Yes, that's the very important part of the season. Um, which I like Survivor Guatemala. This is actually the last season I watched when I watched through all the seasons. I got to it and I was like, I don't know what to expect. It's the most forgotten season. I forgot to watch it until now, you know. And then I watched it and I actually liked it a lot. And Joel was getting mad that it was really low on this list, but he had put it a lot lower than I had. He had it at 31, I had it at 26. And so this
Yeah.
it could have been lower than what we got it at now. But I like Survivor Guatemala. I think the opening of the season going through, I think it's like 11-mile hike through the rainforest that takes
Yeah.
like over a day to do. Like that's an insane way. Completely, all the guys are just completely drained and knocked out for a while. Um, Gary Hogaboom, who is actually Gary Hawkins, he's a landscaper, guys. He's not an NFL
What?
quarterback, but finding the idol, um, and the editing in that episode is crazy too because you don't expect him to have found it in that episode. You're like, oh, I guess we don't see anything of it, but they just don't show it. They just kind of skip to tribal, and they're like, oh, you got to find out and see if you found it or not. I think that's a really cool moment. He just pulls it out at tribal, and everyone goes, "Whoa, that's crazy." Which it doesn't really change the game at all because he goes home the next week anyway. But in the moment, it's really cool. Yeah, Danny's win is impressive here, although she is pretty invisible. Like she is like she was the last person from her tribe and she had to beat a lot of people. And Rafe ultimately sells the game away by telling Danny that she can vote him out, which is just kind of messed up. And he should do that if you're trying to win $1 million. And so he kind of deserved it by doing that. But
Nope.
he would have been a good winner if he won, but he just
He would
kind
have.
of he kind of sold at the end there. Um, but I liked season. I think Rafe's my favorite. I liked him a lot. Like he just was pretty good strategically and like he had a knack for the game. Stephanie crashed and burned here. Like she just didn't read the room, I guess, and didn't
Yeah.
realize that her um her villainous ways would come to bite her in the butt here. And so I like Guatemala. Like many people, I know understand why it's forgotten. There's just not a whole lot that goes on, but I like it. I don't love it. Like this episode is about all the seasons that I like but not love.
Mm, that's so true. I think Guatemala is so forgotten, but one guy I just want back so bad is Judd. Bring back Judd. I'm sick of this. Like this guy's like the perfect returnee. What are we doing? I think his whole ADD tribal is hilarious. I
Yeah.
think the fact that he got the idol clue and lied about it, and everyone was just like, "What are you doing? Why are you looking on the ground if you told everyone to look up?" All this stuff is so funny. I love he's just like, "Hope you all get eaten by a bunch of freaking crocodiles," or whatever he says. And like, oh, he's so good. He easily pulls out my favorite moment of the season, which is the ADD tribal,
Yes. It's
where he just freaks out the entire time. It is my favorite moment of the season.
and
He's my
somehow
favorite character. Yeah, like
looks it through. Like people are not like fed up with him. They're just like, we'll keep him around.
yeah, it's just like he's just another guy, and I'm oh my gosh, I want him back so bad. He's so funny to me.
What's the girl's name that like wins the car and she's like, I'm gonna finally beat the car curse and then gets voted out immediately. Like I think that's
Oh my gosh, what is her name? I'm gonna look it up. I remember her.
yeah, but that
Gosh,
that was hilarious too. Like she was just talking him up. Like I'm gonna instead of giving a car for everyone, which is what she should have done, she keeps the car for herself and's like, yeah, that's fine. I'm gonna beat this car curse thing that everyone keeps talking about, and then gets voted
yeah.
out. Win. So
Honestly, like I can't even blame her. Like Like,
I mean, it's a car. It's
oh, Sydney.
Cindy. Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That's pretty funny to me too.
I know she was a dog for that. I can't even blame her. Like even the Stephanie was like, I would have done the exact same thing, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna be mad about it. Yeah. So I think it has some mid gems. I think the location's awesome.
Yes, I love
Um,
the station.
I think the tri swab was weird. I do like the auction. I do like a lot how physical this season is. And I do like Danny like essentially like breaking like I feel like this is the first time the game has ever been like meta like this where she recognized like she could like listen to the questions production asked and like figure out the game from there. That's why she didn't give anything. Like I think that's so brilliant. But also like we didn't know about it at
You know
all.
what?
Like
It makes it harder to
next thing
root.
you know, she's on the final three and you're like, oh my gosh. But yeah, this season, you can see why it's forgettable. I think um, there needs to be more returnees on there. Rafe, Judd, um, we just even Gary Hogelboom, who's not an NFL star. Um, all of
Definitely,
them,
it's
no,
definitely a landscaper.
he is almost guaranteed. But yeah, I don't have much else to say about the season, honestly.
Yeah, neither do I. That's why we can move on to number 29. And we're done with the first 15 or
We did
first
it.
yes. So, moving on, we've got Survivor Samoa, the most just poorly edited season of Survivor of all time. I don't think you could get worse with how badly edited this season is. We get
No,
Russell show basically this entire time. And man, Natalie White, insanely underrated. We don't see any of her game, but she's definitely
she
not
killed
one
the
of
rat.
she's not one of the best winners. She gets a bad rap, but she she beat Russell in the end, and everyone's like, how did she beat Russell? Because she actually
Very
made
cool.
relationships with people. She had a social game, which is something that was not learned for a long time. And you could have looked to the previous season, JT winning, to why the social game is so important. And so Russell, although highly entertaining, we don't get to see anyone else on this season shine. And I think that's just causes major problems.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, of course, like there's not really like when you try to like think about the season, like it is the Russell season. There is no one else you can really attach yourself to because of how lopsided the editing is. But like you can see why the editors did that. But like I do wish they did less of it because he did essentially like break the idols. Like learning like doing it in the way he did it was insane at the time without any idol clues. He just like figured like this is where they'd hide it and found it and it just so cool to see him kind of like flip the entire game because of it, where they were down in numbers and they do come all the way back. And I do think it is to his benefit that that happened, or else like I do not think Natalie would have taken him. Like if it was a more fluid game, like I think at some point like all of them would be like, okay, like no more Russ. But they kind of had to. They had to stick together, and I do give Russell a lot of props for like doing what he said he was going to do. But I do love the irony that a dumb blonde or whatever he said did beat him at the end, which I will say I am not a big fan of Russell's game. Like obviously, like the social aspect to me is the most important of any of them in Survivor. It has been proven over and over again. But I do think, and this is my probably one of my hot takes, is that I think on a modern season, Russell does win.
Mm, that is a hot take. I don't know. I could see that happening. I think there are many iterations where Russell wins. I think he just didn't know his cast, and I think that was a major problem that he
Yeah.
had in the game. He didn't know the effect, like how he was being, I guess, received, and he didn't really have that awareness, that kind of put him in that place,
Yeah.
and so, and then we also have, was his, I don't even remember his name, the guy that almost won, like the last guy from
Oh,
Glue.
Brett,
Brett,
Brent,
yeah, yeah,
Brett.
Brett,
I think
yeah.
Brett.
I wanted to say Brent.
I
I knew
know.
it was one right, but Brett is like dude was about to win. He gets like four confessionals the entire season. Same with Natalie.
Yeah,
Like,
no kidding. Like,
yeah, like everyone's like, oh, he's gonna win, and it's like, how? Literally how?
who
And
are you?
who even are you? I think Danger Dave Ball, great character. I love Danger Dave.
Love Danger Dave. Shout out.
Making love's my game is what he says. I think it's hilarious. Um,
Good game to
was that?
good game to have. He didn't have much of a survivor one, so no.
Oh no, didn't have much of a Survivor one. Neither did
Oh,
any of the Glue members. They just let,
no.
the Fofos just steamroll them, which I think is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Like it's just very, it's kind of cool if you like the underdog story. Like
It's a great underdog story,
yeah,
especially if you're like a Russell fan. Like,
yeah. I think this season could just do really well on a re-edit. I know that Survivor's never going to do re-edits or anything like that, but like if if there was a re-edit, it would be probably ranked a lot higher. Just like if we had a balance of like seeing different people.
you know what? I'll say it for all you football fans out there, you're gonna understand this. Russell is like the Dallas Cowboy of Survivor. Every year, every season, oh, this is the year, this is the season. I should have won it all. No, okay. Always have a fundamental piece missing. I'm sick of it. No, I think Russell, like, I think he gets like a lot of justifiable hate. I sometimes like people like bash on his game, but like I also have to give him props for the fact that like he did revolutionize the game in a way that we had never seen, a way that people still do to this day. I mean, like if you look at Tony's Cagayan game and Russell's game, you're like, there's low key a lot of similarities to this. And but Tony's one of the most beloved players ever, and Russ is one of the most hated. And it really shows you how likability is a player and expressiveness, but also like how genuine you have to be to win the game. Which I do think Samoa is, if you look at it as a way of like how not to win, is a lot better than saying like how to win.
Exactly. And I think obviously we've seen villains win in the past, like Parvati, you know, 3 seasons
Mm.
prior. Like she was pretty villainous in her game. She was definitely not a hero by any means. She made a lot of cutthroat moves. You can win as a villain, but the way Russell went about it was just kind of strayed far away from his cast, and he didn't know who he was playing with, and I think that was his ultimate downfall. Um, and then obviously Natalie just doesn't get really talked about enough because we didn't get anything from her. Like the way the show was edited was just bad, and so it's hard to rank this season higher than what we have it at.
Yeah. Yeah, I got nothing else to say. I think we should
Yeah,
probably move on
let's do it.
to a modern season. A season that is very controversial. A season when even when I watched it, I was like, what is happening? We have probably the worst name title of any Survivor season. Survivor Triple H, Heroes versus Hustlers versus Healers. What the heck? I don't even remember. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It doesn't even make sense.
HHH.
Yeah, HHH. Yeah, this season obviously dominated from the start of the forced fire making twist. We have it saving Ben, who had idled for like 3 rounds or something like crazy. Um,
Justice for
not a
Death.
lot. Yeah, for real. Oh my gosh, bro. But this season kind of like marked a lot of where Survivor started to like start going down. Um, not in like the sense of like things were going bad, but I think more so relying on twists. And I can see where their heart was at with the forced fire making, but I do think it was a detriment to a lot of good players rather than perhaps saving them because like I think Devin would have been a better winner than Ben, all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. But I do think there's a lot of good stuff in the season as well. I do think it's very funny. It's a good cast. It's a great cast, a great final five. One of my favorite final fives in the history of Survivor. And yeah, I don't know what you got to say about it.
Yeah, I like the cast a lot too. All the tribes are pretty interesting to me. Like is I think his name's Alan, like in the first in the
Yeah,
pre-merge.
yeah, yeah.
He's hilarious.
I love
Like
him.
give me more of him. We got, like Dr. Mike, Joe Mena, like just some fun characters. Um this season is very just kind of mid. Like that's all I can think when I think of this season. Like I don't there's a lot I like about it, but there's also a lot that is left to be desired. Um, and then in the end, they weren't upfront with us about like the fire making twist. They weren't upfront with the fans or the players, which make
Mhm.
you think it's rigged, like if people were actually the producers were actually upfront about it and told them like this is what's going to happen this season. We're starting a fire making final four. They could actually like strategize around it, which we've seen in every season since. Like they always tell them that it's coming, um, or I guess they know it's coming. I guess I don't know. They it could not come, but it always does. We know it is at this point. It's here to stay. I don't not a big fan of the fire making twist. Like I haven't really met anyone that likes it a lot. I think like casual fans think it's interesting, but it's definitely run its course. Like we've had it for
Oh,
over 10 seasons now. And so it's it's done. I don't really
it's over.
much for it. I think the initial draw to having a final four was being a tie in the final four, like having like a forced fire making challenge. That's
Mhm.
stakes. There's interesting tension there. Like there's a tie vote that has to come down to this fire making challenge. Whereas if it's automatically a fire making challenge every time, it just makes it less worth it. You if you're trying to get out of a threat, you get them out at 5 now instead of 4. Like that only changes that. The good players should be able to navigate through a final four vote. And so
Yeah.
I can
And
rant about the Power Four making challenge all day, but I need to talk about this season a little bit more. I really like Devin a lot. He got robbed. Um, he was never going to play again because he wants to play with his mom. But I think he's a cool character. And then actually, there's the moment with Ben and the bamboo cracking. Like that's probably my favorite moment of the season. Um,
yeah.
he kind of has military like war flashbacks. And you kind of get to sit through the with him and have him talk about to the audience about that. I think that's like a very like touching moment. Um, I'm not a Ben hater at all, but I just excuse me, probably would have rather Devin win. So that's kind of all I have to say about HHH.
Yeah. I think it's kind of unfortunate for Ben, kind of the fact that like and I think production in general, like I don't think production could have ever like predicted that Ben would be so good at finding idols. And like I know people think it's rigged, but like we saw it in like Winners at War. Like Ben like off the rip used it to be like as social game, which I think is brilliant. Like to credit to him. Like he was playing a great game in like HHH until like I don't know, like final seven when it all blew up. But I mean, if this was any other season, like I don't think it's that big of a deal. It just like looked really bad. I think Ben did what he could to get to the end and win, and he did, and I give him a lot of props for that. Obviously, I'm a big Devin lover. I love Devin. I think his final five vote is brilliant. Is saved himself. Like I think that is great. I think I think he wins. I think him or Ryan wins. I think the final three is great. Underrated person I think this season is Lauren. I love her. She obviously messed up with the pearl or like crab shell. I don't even know what it was, but obviously I love him. But this is a very middling season. Nothing too crazy outside of the controversy with it. But I do love that a lot of it kind of gets like resolved in like later seasons with Ben and Winners at War.
Yeah, that's kind of don't have anything else to say myself either. So going on to number 27, we've got Survivor Palau, which middle of the pack is exactly where this season goes. I think just because which we have it very similar to it's perfectly averaged out to 27. I have it at 29, you have 25. So pretty middle of the pack for both of us. I think Palau is fantastic on a first to watch, like watching the downfall, of one tribe getting absolutely decimated, like the entire season. Stephanie, the remaining survivor from the tribe, goes on and then makes it like 3 votes later. But then we get the story about Tom and Ian kind of fighting for the win at the end. We have like a 12-hour challenge. there's some just great moments, great TV, like something we've never seen, which is a tribe just completely falling down and not being able to do anything. Like Oolong is probably still considered the worst tribe ever in Survivor history. They just could not win a single thing. Um, and then they also had to give them like a win because like midway through the pre-merge, they were like, "Oh, both of y'all are going to travel." So, yeah, that was the only time that someone else from the other tribe had the chance to get voted out. So, I don't know what your thoughts about Pullout are. I just don't think I could watch it again and enjoy it nearly as much as I did the first time, just knowing what happens.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like a lot of the appeal to the season is just like watching day by day of like watching this tribe just go down the one. And I do think Stephanie getting to the end is the best case scenario because she's a great character. I love her. I don't think she's like necessarily a great player until Guatemala. She definitely makes mistakes this season, but you can't really blame her because like she's just running with her head cut off, trying to make it to the end, cutting deals wherever she can. But I personally think this season is just like so good because Tom and Ian are just going back and forth in this. That is the father-son relationship that Tom, I think, is one of the best manipulators in the history of Survivor. The way he manipulates Ian is masterful. Something you just don't really get to see a lot in modern seasons of Survivor, of like this like subtle manipulation, but it also like you see Ian's point of view. It's so good. Obviously, Final Immunity, my favorite moment of the whole season, truly iconic. Like it really puts Survivor on the map. That you could be like, yeah, there was a 12-hour challenge where they just hung on buoys in the middle of the ocean. Like that's what Survivor is. And obviously, like Jeff probably hated it. I can't blame him. I'd be also like so upset if I had to stand there for 12 hours. But also, they're out there for 12 hours too, trying to win $1 million. I think it's great. I think Katie has one of my favorite lines in the history of Survivor where it's like, what did she say? She was like,
The Karen that
I'm trying to
sucks.
get those. Yeah, like, it's because she sucks. Oh my God. There's some good moments too. Again, this is like a very middling season. I love Ian. I wish Ian returned. I love Tom's return. It showed him more as like a bot, like he can play from the bottom and be very good. But we got to see a very dominant win this season,
Yeah,
and I'm a
Tom's
sucker
win
for
is
those.
great. Hit them catching a shark, like that's also a
Yeah,
really cool moment. Like insane. And I think sea snakes as well, like they get those as well. Like it's
yeah.
beautiful location. I think the military theme is also like super cool. Um, which is something that's not really talked about a lot. But the twist at the beginning of the season where two people get voted out and don't have a chance to play is just kind of sour taste in your mouth from the first episode. I mean, justice for
Rip
Wanda.
Walker.
Yeah, rip Wanda and whoever the other guy is. I don't know his name, but
It doesn't matter. Just one.
doesn't matter. Just Wanda. But yeah, I also agree with you. It's pretty middling. Um, I pretty much said all that I need to say about this season too.
Yeah, I would say that this season is like pretty much dominated by Tom, but I do think that overall we do get to see a lot of like interesting strategy and especially like the evolution of like storytelling in Survivor, where I think it was cool where like editors pull like a lot of tricks in this, but they were talking about, hey, we found a giant like Oolong found a giant oyster and they're super hyped about it, but Tom found a shark, like the gray white, and they hype up Tom and like you can tell Tom's gonna win, but it makes sense. And I think this is like one of the like best utilizations of like a winner's edit that isn't like overbearing, but you like get it and you get to see like the full round picture of him and having opposition. So that's all I got to say about that. Going on to one of
Last
my
one.
one of my favorite seasons. I put this one obviously a little higher than Caleb, but I have reasoning. It is the first ever season of Survivor, Survivor Borneo. Obviously, this season is so different than any other season of Survivor. But I think there's such a charm to it. I think the storytelling is like brilliant. I think the votes are so interesting because you just get to see the building blocks of the game. And I don't know about you. I think I love the cast. I think they nailed it
Yeah,
off the
they did.
bat. And seeing Rich win is such a fitting winner that, the Snakes and Rats speech to me is one of the most iconic moments of all of television. Like everyone remembers that. Even like I could ask my parents right now to be like, oh yeah, like snakes and rats, Kelly was a rat, Rich was a snake. And it perfectly shows like what Survivor is about. That if you want to win the game, you have to be the snake that eats the rat. And it sets it up and builds it all together. Where I think one of the coolest editing tricks of all Survivor is the fact that Rich's first confessional is just telling the audience that he's going to win, and we get to see him win. Like I think that is so bold off the first season. I love it. Obviously, there's a lot of problems because it is the first season, but I personally find it charming.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of charm. I can't justify putting it above mini seasons just because it's hard, like it's boring. It's more of a nature documentary than it is like a competition show because we have one player who literally votes out by the alphabet, like the alphabet strategy. Like not
Love
no
it.
real
Bring it
strategic.
back.
Like Greg
Bring it
doesn't
back.
like alliances. We do get the first ever Survivor alliance with the Toggy Four, and then like once again, I think the show only survives with Rich winning. Like the show wouldn't be what it is today without Rich winning the $1 million versus Kelly. And I think although that has haunted Kelly to this day, like it was best for the show and made the show so successful. And so we have to attribute Rich for that. My favorite moment is the final immunity challenge when Rich just has
Yeah.
like perfect move there. He is competing. He steps off the challenge. He's like either way, y'all are gonna take me, and so I'm just gonna step out and watch y'all duke it out. And just he knows where he's at. He gets sits there and eats oranges and explains it to everyone, and then he ends up winning the game. And I think that just perfectly like encapsulates the season and makes Survivor as iconic as it is today. Like we wouldn't be here without that. And I agree, the cast is great too. And so, although there's a Pagong, like hence the name, like the tribe that got Pagong
Mhm.
is called Pagong, and so that's why we have that phrase. But still, like we wouldn't be here without this season. It's such a building block. It's hard to rank. So that's why I have it low. He has it high. It doesn't really matter. Like this season's impossible to rank. Like it's not really comparative to the other ones.
Yeah, it is like probably the most like it is up to you kind of season where if you like it or not. I obviously love it. Like I have a lot of stake because my dad was like always like hyped it up to me. He's like, yeah, this guy who was like naked the entire season, like ran around grabbing snakes and won. And I was like, what? And like when he showed me a season, I was like, whoa, this is like super weird, but like super cool that it was like basically this battle versus good and evil that like Rich was like Darth Vader and like Kelly was like Luke, like a Jedi. And the interesting part is that the villain wins. And I personally love it. There's so many iconic moments to me, like the merge vote being like a 4-1-1-1, like something crazy. There's that. The first alliances, you got Kelly going on the first ever immunity run. Um, all these things I love, and we attribute it to this season where Rich, like, I love the fact that Rich had to explain to the host of Survivor and explain the game like during final immunity. It's such a surreal moment where like Jeff, you see the moment that Jeff gets it and realize that Rich got it the entire time and why he is going to win. And he was probably going to win more if it wasn't for Snakes and Rats. But I think the fact that it was like like a 4-5 vote or whatever it was, I think that made it even better.
Yeah.
And I obviously love the season. I can see why like people don't. It is very boring at times, but that's what fast forward is for, and that's where I make my money. So can't be too mad.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got through them all.
We did. Congratulations to us. And that will be a wrap for episode 2 of the Grab Your Torch Survivor rankings. And we'll be back next week to do the next 10, which will be numbers 25 through 4, number 25 to 16, my bad. And then for the final one, we'll have a mega episode of ranking 15 seasons of Survivor in one, which will be really fun because there'll be fun seasons to talk about, and we'll
Oh
talk
yeah,
about our hot takes up there as well. And we got some interesting ones for next week as well. So hope y'all stay tuned. I know it's the off season right now, so there's not a lot to do or Survivor wise. Go watch an old season. We got one of the best ones on Netflix right now on Per Island, so go watch that one. Um,
gotta watch.
and then feel free to like, subscribe, and stick around if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening in the podcast form. Please rate and review us, and we'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.